Story 3. The Wall Between Us. The knocking started on my third night in the apartment. 3 soft taps against the shared wall between my bedroom and my neighbor's living room. So gentle, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined them. I was 19, fresh out of my parents' house, renting a converted section of an old Victorian that had been split into 2 units. Mine taking up what used to be the building's parlor and kitchen, hers occupying the rest. The landlord had warned me during the walkthrough that Mrs. Halloway next door was elderly and particular, that she'd had issues with previous tenants. But the rent was cheap and the space was mine, so I'd signed the lease without asking too many questions. Mrs. Halloway was maybe 70, thin as a rail with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, and she'd watched from her window when I moved in, never offering to help, just observing with eyes that never seemed to blink. The knocking happened again the next night, same pattern, 3 taps. But this time I was paying attention and I realized the taps came exactly when I stood up from my bed to get water, as if someone on the other side knew precisely when I'd moved, as if they'd been listening for it. I ignored it, climbed back into bed, pulled the covers up, and tried to sleep. But then came 3 more taps, directly behind my headboard, right where my head rested against the wall. Over the following weeks, the pattern became impossible to deny. Every time I walked across my room, 3 taps followed, matching my footsteps. When I opened my closet, 3 taps. When I sat at my desk, 3 taps. The knocking was acknowledgement, documentation, a constant reminder that every movement I made was being monitored and recorded by someone on the other side of that wall. I tried to catch her at it, pressing my ear against the wall to hear what she was doing, but all I could detect was silence and occasionally the faint sound of breathing, as if she stood on her side, listening right back at me. My roommates, who lived in the other sections of the building, told me Mrs. Halloway had always been strange, that she'd driven out 3 tenants before me with her obsessive complaints and weird behavior. But nobody had ever done anything about it, because she'd lived there for 30 years and apparently had some arrangement with the landlord. Then the knocking changed. It became violent, aggressive pounding that shook picture frames on my wall. And it happened at all hours, 3 a.m., 5 a.m., random intervals throughout the day, always when I was alone. I started documenting it, recording video on my phone with time stamps. And that's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. In the recordings, you could hear the knocking clearly, but you could also hear something else, a voice, so faint it was almost subsonic, coming through the wall in rhythm with the pounding. I isolated the audio, amplified it, and heard Mrs. Halloway singing in a thin, wavering voice, singing about what I was wearing, what I was doing, describing my clothes, my hair, my movements with perfect accuracy. I confronted her once, knocking on her door at noon when I knew she'd be awake. And when she answered, she looked at me with such hatred that I actually stepped backward, nearly falling down her porch steps. She told me in a voice like broken glass that I was too loud, too careless, that I didn't respect the house the way previous tenants had, that I would learn just like they did. And then she slammed the door in my face hard enough to rattle the frame. That night the singing got worse, loud enough that I could hear every word without amplification. And she was describing things she couldn't possibly know. What color underwear I'd put on that morning, the birthmark on my left shoulder blade, the nightmare I'd had 3 nights ago about drowning. I called my landlord, demanded to break my lease, told him everything. But he said Mrs. Halloway was just old and confused, that I needed to be patient. that I only had 4 more months until my lease ended naturally, and he couldn't let me out early without penalty. So I stayed, and the singing continued, and I started sleeping with headphones in, playing white noise to drown out her voice. But even that didn't help, because I could feel her watching somehow, could sense her attention through the wall-like heat from a fire. Then one morning, I woke up and found things moved in my room, my hairbrush on the opposite side of the dresser, my books rearranged on the shelf, my closet door open when I'd definitely closed it the night before. I checked my locks, checked my windows. Everything was secure, no signs of forced entry. But something had been in my room while I slept. Something had touched my belongings and moved them just enough for me to notice. I set up my phone to record while I slept that night, propped on my dresser facing my bed. And in the morning, I watched the footage with my hands over my mouth to keep from screaming. At 2:34 a.m., my closet door slowly opened from the inside, and Mrs. Holloway emerged, impossibly thin and moving with a fluidity that didn't match her age. And she stood beside my bed for 20 minutes just watching me sleep, occasionally reaching out to touch my hair with fingers that looked too long, too jointed, before she returned to the closet and pulled the door closed behind her. I paused the video, rewound it, watched again to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. And then I opened my closet with shaking hands, pushing past my hanging clothes to the back wall where I'd never bothered to look closely before. The wall wasn't solid, it was a door, painted to match and fitted so precisely I'd never noticed. And when I pushed on it, the door swung inward, revealing darkness and a smell like old perfume and mothballs. I used my phone's flashlight to see inside, and what I found was a crawl space that ran behind all the walls of my apartment. Narrow passages between the studs that let someone move through the entire structure unseen. And scattered throughout were things that didn't belong to me, photographs of people I'd never met. Clothes and styles from decades ago, jewelry, driver's licenses, all arranged in careful groupings like shrines. There were 7 groupings total, 7 sets of belongings from 7 different people. And in the center of each shrine was a photograph of someone sleeping in my bed. The same angle from the same position, 7 different faces over what must have been years or decades. The most recent shrine had my photograph, taken just last week while I slept, and scattered around it were things I thought I'd lost. A hair tie, a receipt, a grocery list in my handwriting, all stolen and arranged with obsessive care. Behind the shrines, hanging on nails driven into the support beams, were 7 keys on 7 different key rings, each one labeled with a date. And the most recent key was labeled with the day I'd moved in. The day I'd received my apartment key from the landlord, who I now understood had been giving Mrs. Holloway copies all along. She had access to every inch of my space, had been visiting while I slept, had been collecting pieces of me just like she'd collected pieces of all the others. And somewhere in this darkness were the previous tenants who'd disappeared. The ones nobody ever followed up on because they were young and transient and people assumed they'd just moved on. The singing started again from somewhere deep in the crawl space, echoing off the narrow walls, and it was getting closer. And I realized she knew I'd found her secret place, knew I'd seen the shrines. And the singing was telling me exactly what would happen next, describing how I would join the collection, how I would stay in the walls forever, where she could watch me always, where I would be safe and perfect and hers. I ran from that closet, grabbed my keys and phone, and I didn't stop running until I was in my car pulling away from that house. And even now, 3 states away, living under a different name, I still hear the singing sometimes when I'm falling asleep. Still feel her attention finding me through walls that should be solid. And I know with terrible certainty that for months have passed and my lease has ended. And she's coming to collect what she believes I still owe her. Like if you're still awake, subscribe so she doesn't find you next. Because the wall between you and something terrible is always thinner than you think. And there's always someone on the other side, waiting patiently for you to let your guard down, listening to every sound you make, learning your patterns, preparing for the night when they finally step through into your space and you discover that you were never alone, that you were never safe, that the house you thought protected you was really just a cage you'd locked yourself inside with something that's been watching you all along. Story 1. The basement game. The controller felt warm in my hands, almost feverish, though I'd been holding it for hours. My best friend Marcus sat beside me on the worn basement couch, his eyes fixed on the screen as we loaded into another match, the familiar hum of the console filling the silence between us. It was spring break, that dead week in March, when everyone else fled to beaches or mountains. But we stayed behind in my empty house, content to lose ourselves in digital worlds while rain hammered the windows above. My parents had left that morning for their anniversary trip up north, kissing me goodbye and reminding me to lock the doors, to call if anything happened, to be responsible. I'd nodded through their concerns, already imagining the freedom of an empty house, the luxury of gaming until dawn without anyone telling us to lower the volume or go to bed. Marcus had arrived around noon with 2 grocery bags full of energy drinks and chips, the essential supplies for our planned marathon. We'd been playing for 6 hours straight when the lobby screen flickered and displayed something impossible. Player 1, me. Player 2, Marcus. Player 3, 447 Oakmont Drive. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening into a cold knot. That was my address. The exact address of the house we were sitting in right now. Marcus laughed nervously beside me, reaching over to tap my shoulder, asking if I'd somehow created a duplicate account as a joke, but I hadn't touched anything. The third player's avatar was blank, just a black silhouette where a profile picture should be, and their status showed active, online, in this house. I tried to back out of the lobby, but the interface froze, the spinning loading icon mocking us as the third player's microphone icon lit up green. No sound came through the speakers, just a faint static that seemed to breathe, to pulse with something almost alive. Then the icon went dark, and the match loaded anyway, dropping all 3 of us into the game world. We spawned in a digital recreation of a suburban basement, nearly identical to the one we sat in, complete with the same furniture arrangement, the same posters on the walls, even the same stain on the carpet where I'd spilled soda 2 summers ago. The third player's character stood in the corner of the virtual basement, facing the wall, completely motionless. Marcus and I exchanged glances, his face pale in the television's glow, and without speaking, we both knew something had gone very wrong tonight. We should probably stop playing. Marcus whispered, but neither of us moved to turn off the console. The third player's character remained frozen in the corner of the virtual basement, its blank avatar somehow watching us, slowly, even while facing the wall. I navigated my character closer, curiosity overriding the dread pooling in my chest. And as I approached, the third player suddenly spun around with inhuman speed, and their character sprinted directly at mine, closing the distance in seconds before stopping just inches from my avatar's face. The screen glitched, horizontal lines of static cutting through the image, and for just a fraction of a second, I could swear I saw a real face behind the blank silhouette. Someone with hollow eyes and a smile too wide for any human mouth. Then everything returned to normal, the match continuing as if nothing had happened, but the third player was gone, simply vanished from the game world without disconnecting. Marcus grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to hurt, and he pointed at the corner of the actual basement. The physical corner that corresponded to where the third player had been standing in the game. There was nothing there, just shadows and the old storage boxes we'd shoved there months ago. But something felt different about that space now, as if the air had thickened, as if something occupied it that our eyes couldn't quite process. "Listen," Marcus said, and we both went silent, holding our breath. From somewhere above us came the unmistakable creak of floorboards, the sound of weight shifting from one foot to another. Someone moving slowly through my parents' empty house. My mind raced through possibilities, trying to rationalize what we'd heard. Maybe the house settling, maybe the cat that didn't exist, maybe anything except the obvious truth that someone had entered while we'd been absorbed in our game. The creaking continued, a deliberate pattern of steps that moved from the kitchen towards the living room, then stopped directly above the basement door. If you're still watching this, if you're still awake wherever you are, I want you to understand something about fear. Real fear isn't the jump scare in a movie or the monster under the bed from childhood nightmares. Real fear is knowing with absolute certainty that you are not alone, that something has invaded your space, your safety, and there's nothing you can do except wait to discover what it wants from you. We sat frozen on that couch, controllers forgotten in our laps, as 3 distinct knocks echoed from the ceiling directly above our heads. Then silence, then 2 more knocks. The same pattern the third player's character had used in the game. The same rhythm, 3 and 2, a code we somehow understood meant acknowledgement, meant I see you, meant I'm coming. Marcus was already moving, pulling me toward the small closet in the corner of the basement, the same corner where the third player's avatar had stood. And I wanted to resist, wanted to say anywhere but there. But my body obeyed the instinct to hide. We squeezed inside among winter coats that smelled like mothballs and old leather, pulling the door almost closed, leaving just a crack to see through. My phone was in my pocket, and with trembling hands I pulled it out. The screen's glow painfully bright in our confined darkness. I was about to dial 911 when Marcus grabbed my wrist, his eyes wide with terror, and he pointed at my phone's screen.
Don't call!
The gaming app we'd been using was still running, still showing we were in an active match, but now it displayed something new. A notification I'd never seen before, now streaming to local network, followed by an IP address and viewer count. 1 viewer. Someone in this house, connected to my home network, had been watching our gameplay this entire time. I scrolled frantically, trying to find more information, and discovered the stream had been active for 6 hours since the moment Marcus arrived this afternoon. We'd been monitored from the beginning, observed as we laughed and played, studied as we grew comfortable in our assumed privacy. Worse still was the chat log, dozens of messages time-stamped throughout the evening, all from the same anonymous user. 3:47 p.m. Blue shirt looks new. 5:23 p.m. The one on the left chews his fingernails. 6:15 p.m. They ordered pizza, but only ate half. 8:52 p.m. The dark-haired one keeps checking his phone. 9:34 p.m. They don't know I'm already inside. The last message had been sent 2 minutes ago, right before we heard the footsteps upstairs, and it simply read, "Basement closet, smart choice, but I can wait." My blood turned to ice as I realized whoever was in my house wasn't just watching through the stream anymore. They were reading my screen right now, seeing exactly what I was seeing, watching me discover how thoroughly I'd been violated. Marcus saw it too, his face draining of color, and we both understood we couldn't call for help, couldn't make a sound, because any action we took would be immediately known to our observer. The gaming console in the basement was still on, its fan whirred softly, and through the crack in the closet door, I could see the television screen had changed. Our game had closed itself, replaced by what looked like security camera footage. Multiple windows showing different angles of my house's interior. Kitchen, living room, hallway, and there, in the bottom right corner, a perfect view of the basement from somewhere near the ceiling, showing our abandoned couch, the glowing television, and the closet door that didn't quite close all the way. Story 2. The Midnight Visitor. The knock came at 9:47 p.m. 3 sharp raps that cut through the sound of rain against my windows and the movie I'd been half watching on the couch. I wasn't expecting anyone, hadn't ordered food, had no friends in this neighborhood yet after moving here just 2 months ago. Through the peephole, I saw a man in his 40s wearing a brown jacket and knit beanie, water dripping from his shoulders, and in his hands he gripped a snow shovel, the metal blade pointing downward. It was late March, the last gasps of winter giving way to spring rain, and there hadn't been snow on the ground for 3 weeks. The shovel made no sense. I cracked the door an inch, keeping the chain lock engaged, and asked what he wanted. He smiled, but it was wrong somehow, his lips pulling back too far, exposing too many teeth, and his eyes didn't match the smile at all. They remained flat and cold like stones at the bottom of a well. He started explaining in a rambling, disjointed way that he was just a neighbor doing odd jobs, looking for yard work, anything really. He could trim hedges or clear gutters or dig up old tree stumps, whatever I needed, and his voice had this desperate edge that set off every alarm in my brain. I told him no thank you, already closing the door. But he lunged forward and caught it with his palm, holding it open against my pressure. We stood there for maybe 3 seconds, me pushing, him resisting, his smile never faltering. And in those seconds, I noticed details I wish I could forget. The shovel's blade wasn't just wet from rain. It was caked with fresh, dark soil, the kind that clings when it's recently disturbed, recently dug. Caught in the metal's edge were fibers, small threads of what looked like blue fabric, and something else, something that might have been hair. His fingernails were black with dirt, packed deep under each nail as if he'd been clawing at the earth with his bare hands before grabbing the shovel. Then he let go, stepping back with that horrible smile still fixed on his face, and he said, "I'll come back later when you've had time to think about it," before turning and walking into the rain. I slammed the door, locked it, slid the deadbolt, attached the chain, and stood there shaking as I watched through the peephole while he walked to a red sedan parked at the curb. He placed the shovel carefully in the trunk, looking up and down the street first as if checking for witnesses, then drove away slowly, his taillights disappearing into the fog.
Finally.
That should have been the end of it. Just a weird encounter with a strange man. But as I walked back to my couch, I glanced out my back window and saw something that made my legs go weak. My backyard was small, bordered by a wooden fence that needed painting, mostly lawn with a single oak tree in the center, and I'd barely paid attention to it since moving in, using the space maybe twice to sit outside with morning coffee. But now, in the dim light from my porch, I could see the ground near the fence line had been disturbed, a section of grass torn up and soil mounded in a way that definitely hadn't been there this morning when I'd left for work. It looked like someone had dug there recently, very recently, and then tried to cover it back up without much care for how obvious it appeared. I stood at the window for 10 minutes, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe an animal, maybe drainage issues, maybe anything except what my instincts screamed it actually was. Then I noticed something white caught in the chain link fence, fluttering in the rain, and even from this distance I could tell it was paper. Every rational part of my brain said stay inside, call the police, don't investigate, but a larger part needed to know, needed to see, because the not knowing felt more dangerous than the truth. I grabbed a flashlight, unlocked the back door, and stepped into the rain, immediately soaked. The cold water running down my neck as I crossed the yard toward the fence. The paper was folded once, tucked into the chain link at exactly my eye level, as if someone had measured and placed it there specifically for me to find. My hands shook as I unfolded it, the ink already running slightly from the rain. But the words were still legible, written in desperate, cramped handwriting that looked like it had been done in a hurry. The note read, "If you're reading this, you're the new resident at 447 Oakmont, and you need to know these 5 rules immediately. 1. Never open your door after 10 p.m., no matter who knocks or what they say. 2. Never look in his car trunk when he parks outside. Keep your blinds closed and your eyes down. 3. Never call him by his real name if he tells you what it is. Forget immediately and never speak it aloud. 4. Never ask what he's digging or why the soil is always fresh. Pretend you don't notice the mounds that appear overnight. 5. Never, under any circumstances, let him know you've seen what's buried in your backyard, because if he realizes you know, you'll be the next one digging your own grave while he watches." The note wasn't signed, no date, but the paper was weathered as if it had been out here for weeks or months, waiting for someone to find it. And I realized with creeping horror that this wasn't the first time this man had visited this address, that previous residents had encountered him, that at least one of them had been terrified enough to leave a warning behind. I looked at the disturbed soil near the fence, then at my house, calculating the distance, and understood that if I started digging there, if I called the police and they excavated that spot, we would find something that explained the shovel, the dirt under his fingernails, the fabric fibers caught in the blade. I ran back inside, locking the door behind me, the note clutched in my wet hand, and I grabbed my phone to call 911. But as I started to dial, headlights swept across my front windows. The red sedan was back, parking directly in front of my house. The engine cutting off, but the headlights remaining on, twin beams cutting through the rain and illuminating my front door. I dropped to the floor instinctively, crawling toward the window where I could peek out without being seen. And I watched as the man sat motionless in the driver's seat, his face obscured by shadow, but his posture suggesting he was staring directly at my house, directly at where I'd been standing moments ago. He made no move to exit the vehicle, just sat there, waiting. And the minutes stretched out like hours as rain drummed against his roof and my heart hammered against my ribs. Then I heard it, a sound that turned my blood to ice. 3 slow thuds from his trunk, deliberate and rhythmic, followed by a pause that lasted exactly 5 seconds, then 2 more thuds. The pattern repeated. 3 thuds, pause, 2 thuds, 3 thuds, pause, 2 thuds, over and over with mechanical precision. It was a distress signal, the same one I'd learned in a women's safety course 3 years ago. The universal code for someone trapped and running out of air, someone desperate to be found. The realization hit me like a physical blow. There was someone alive in that trunk. Someone imprisoned and suffocating. Someone trying to signal for help in the only way they could. I finished dialing 911, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. And when the dispatcher answered, I whispered everything. The man at my door, the shovel, the disturbed earth in my backyard, the car parked outside with someone trapped in the trunk. She told me to stay inside, to keep the doors locked, said officers were being dispatched immediately, and I could hear her typing rapidly as she kept me on the line. The thumping from the trunk continued. 3
911.
and 2, 3
What is your
and
emergency?
2. A desperate Morse code that seemed to be weakening with each repetition. The sound growing fainter as whoever was inside used up their remaining oxygen. The man in the driver's seat still hadn't moved, hadn't looked away from my house, and I realized he knew I could hear the thumping. Knew I understood what it meant, and he was watching to see what I would do. Whether I would follow Rule 2 and keep my blinds closed and my eyes down, or whether I would break the rules and involve the police. Then his door opened and he stepped out into the rain, leaving the car running, the trunk still thumping weakly. And he walked toward my front door with that same horrible smile I'd seen earlier, pulling something from his jacket pocket that caught the streetlight's gleam. Something long and metal
Is
that
anyone
might have
there?
been a knife or might have been something worse. I backed away from the window, phone pressed to my ear. The dispatcher's voice asking if I was still there, if I was safe, telling me the officers were 2 minutes away. Just 2 more minutes, but time had stopped meaning anything.